Guys, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Wrestling Collector Shop. The next time you're looking to add the newest wrestling figures to your lineup, you've got to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com. Started by collectors for collectors around the globe, Wrestling Collector Shop has been serving fans the latest and greatest in wrestling action figures since 2002. Whether you're looking for basics, elites, or ultimates, Wrestling Collector Shop should be your first stop the next time you're looking for wrestling figures. So make sure to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com and use code SWOGGLE to save yourself 10% on your order. Again, that's 10% off with code SWOGGLE only at WrestlingCollectorShop.com. It's another episode going Postl, and as you saw in the title, it's small talk time. It's small talk time. It's myself and a good pal, Sam Roberts. So before we go any farther, I'm Dylan. That's George. Hit him with it.
What's going on, guys? Very excited for this one today, Dylan. The camera quality, the audio quality of Sam Roberts.
It makes me so mad. It makes me so mad.
Like, I think the only person who had as good of a setup was CVV.
Well, yeah, these are professionals.
I say, which makes sense because they're in the big times and they're coming at our little world to do something here. But man, you handled yourself very well. We'll get into that. You guys will hear about that in a little bit. Real quick. Gotta get the social plugs in there. At Going Postl Pod, at Dylan Postl, youtube.com/Dylan Postl. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, thank you. We really appreciate that. But if you would like to see the video version of this and see what we're talking about with Sam Roberts or CVV's crazy ass camera setup, you could do that over at youtube.com/Dylan Postl. It's also the place to get all of Dylan's video diaries, figure unboxings, and video versions of State of Affairs as well. DylanPostl.com for all things Dylan. ProWrestlingTees.com/Swoggle for his shirts. SwoggleAuction.com. Get yourself a free $10 credit over at Whatnot. Dylan's going to plug it in the interview with Sam Roberts in like the first 5 minutes. But you know what, Dylan, when's the next stream?
Tonight, live. If you're listening to this live on Wednesday, October 2nd. Tonight. 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, 3 a.m. London time. Whatnot, big auction, a monthly auction. Who knows? I think Sam Roberts is going to join us. He'll be in the chat. He might put some bids in. You never know who's going to show up. You should. SwoggleAuction.com. Get $10 free by signing up.
And hey, while you're at it, if you want to sign up for something else, you can head over to patreon.com/PodXchange. It's PodXchange. And then there's exclusive content from this show as well as State of Affairs and the Game Marks podcast. And speaking of those three shows, if you want to get yourself a little extra merchandise from those three shows, or just get yourself a nice sweatsuit and sweatpants set for PodXchange, well, that is over at PodXchange.shop, spelled the same way, PodXchange. But that's enough for the social plugs, man. I'm super excited to get into this small talk that you did with Sam Roberts. Dylan, there is one thing we got to do before we get into that, though. Do you know what that happens to be?
I peed, I pooped. I ate dinner.
Just one more.
Ad sweep. Nope. Are you a fan of Disney, Pixar, Jurassic Park, The Office, or even WWE? Or maybe you just want a sleek and comfortable patterned shirt? Then you need to check out Roosevelts.com. RSVLTS.com today. Roosevelts makes the most eye-catching and comfortable shirts going today. Whether it's button-ups, or polos, or hoodies, or even hats, and everything in between, Roosevelt's truly has something for everyone. made for those with the love of sports, pop culture, and so much more, and above all else, having a kick-ass time. This clothing is for the bold and fun, for those who dare mighty things. Roosevelts.com, check them out. On this episode, he's a hit radio show host, a podcaster, an all-around good guy, a wrestling figure lover, Sam Roberts. What's the haps, as some may say?
I've got to tell you, I got, and it cost me money. I got the biggest laugh a month or so ago when, I got the little notification that you were live in your whatnot room, and it's always dangerous because I'm just it just pops up on my phone, and I'm just laying down on the couch, watching NXT or whatever wrestling show was on, and so I clicked it, and I was just watching you laugh at a dude who kept getting outbid. And I can't.
It's so much fun, isn't it?
It's so fun that I can't. I'm sitting there going it's a $70 bit, but I can't.
And if you want to join the fun, as this airs live tonight, I'm returning to Whatnot, autographed items, so much merchandise, and you can be part of the fun, man. Whatnot is,
and I was like, well, I don't want to spend $70, but I can't ruin the bit. I have to.
You ended up getting it, right?
Yeah, I just paid the $70 just to watch you just crack up, just to watch you do that. And I was like, it was worth it. But I mean, I think I got an AJ Styles
it was. I think it was the micro brawler.
Yeah, no, it was the card with the big green swatch of some kind of outfit
the patch.
Yeah.
So, Whatnot has obviously for financial things, it's great, but it's also grown its own community. It's another form of Twitch, and that I've realized, it truly is another form of streaming. And I've become I just such a fan of it, and whether this thing that I think is gonna go for $300 goes for $3, a signed Shawn Michaels retro went for $75 the other week, and I was like, okay, but it's but then something crazy, dumb, will go for a crazy amount. So it's just it's just fun. And it's a fun community thing that it's another venture that I really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of fun being in those rooms. And also, I mean, if you're on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, you're asking for super chats, you're asking for whatever. At least now they pay to get something for it. They're buying
getting something. And I always like to do Landon, man. Landon loves Whatnot, I think, more than I do, because he puts like today after school, he has football practice. Then he has to literally rush home after he gets done, and he has to do the Whatnot, the lineup for Wednesday. And he loves putting that together because that's he goes, oh man, Dad, we can only have a couple autograph items, but then we have to have a couple good items. Oh, but Dad, we need a couple random items, because whenever we go to vintage stores, we find the weird things. Right now, I have a Sunny or Sable Rubik's Cube, because I did one of them and I haven't done the other one yet. So I have to do that one this week. And it's just the randomness. And that's what I love. It's man, what kind, and I like eBay, what random WWF merch is out there. And that's what I enjoy.
Yeah, especially from that Attitude Era when
everyone had
everyone was licensing it. It was every whatever product you had, you would just slap it and throw it on and sell it at a kiosk at the mall.
There's got to be condoms out there. That's my thing.
There's definitely
got to be. There's got to be, right?
I think there were WWF condoms, and I think there were Austin condoms as well.
Singly Austin condoms.
Austin 316 condoms. Yeah, I think so. Yes.
I am, as soon as we get off here, I'm going to look on eBay just for Whatnot. Pal!
It's also great. It's also great that you guys like you are doing it, because then when my wife is why'd you pay $70 for this? I go, no, but I also popped Hornswoggle. And she's like, okay.
And then she goes, well, isn't he kind of like a buddy? And then isn't he a buddy? You need to spend $70 to make your friend laugh?
That was the gag.
And then she just scoffs and walks in another room. Yeah. That's right. And then she spends $70 on Amazon, and you can't question it then at that point.
No. Yeah, I've ruined that. I've ruined it. Yeah.
You've done it all. You've done everything. Before we get into the real dirt, we need to talk about something that I didn't know about until about last week. There are Nickelodeon shows out there
Mhm.
that I love, that everyone loves. Guts, Legends
Yeah.
of the Hidden Temple.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have drinking parties that revolve around Legends of the Hidden Temple to this day.
With
People
Olmec?
love Double Dare.
Mhm.
People forget about my favorite show that also Mark Summers hosted, and that was Figure It Out. No, that Suzanne Summers hosted was Figure It Out.
Very close.
I'm thinking,
Summer Sanders hosted Figure It Out.
who did I say? Suzanne
You said
Summers.
Suzanne Summers.
Because I was thinking about Mark Summers, and then I went Suzanne Summers.
But you meant Summer Sanders. Like, you had it the whole time. It was just...
Suzanne Summers did Step by Step.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Another very underrated show. Figure
Great
It Out.
Mhm.
How does this process work? Guys, if you don't know what Figure It Out is, you need to search it. It is a talent show where children would come on with their various talents or stupid pet tricks, and the panelists would have to guess. You had Danny Tamborelli.
Mhm.
Sometimes you had Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Jericho did it.
Jericho did it. They had but was it ever WWF? It was only WCW, right?
I think it
never
was just
WWF.
WCW guys. And it was never and it wasn't like tippy top of the card Jericho.
You weren't
It
getting
was like-
Kevin Nash saying, "Hey, this cockatiel can sing the national anthem."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did this happen? Tell us about Figure It Out.
So, yeah, no, I was on that show. Yeah, because I was watching it. I was a fan of the show. It was a great show.
Right. It was the best.
And back then, like, Danny Tamborelli and Lori Beth Denberg and Michelle Trey, these are
Heroes.
legends.
Heroes.
Legends.
Amanda
Yeah.
Bynes. Heroes.
Heroes. So, like, but at the end of every game show, and they did this not just at the end of Figure It Out, but they would do it at the end of all the game shows, but specifically Figure It Out, they said, if you want to be a contestant, send a videotape of your talent to, and I was like, Mom, get the camcorder out. Because I had this,
You had to send a video in?
VHS.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. So they could see, yeah.
So because I guess they wouldn't just trust that you can do this.
Yeah, fly a bunch of liars to Orlando? No.
What, they flew you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You got a legit booking out of this.
Bro, put me up.
Oh.
A ground trans when I got there. Sign at the airport. Everything.
No.
Yeah. And it said Sam Roberts on it. And I was with my mom and dad, but it was my name that was on the sign. And I was like, yeah, these guys are with me. So because they filmed at Universal Studios. So, like, I have this, my ankle is double jointed. It like clicks, like the bone in the ankle can click up like that,
Yeah.
So I had already known I could do it, but if you put a quarter on it and lay your ankle kind of flat, I can pop my ankle and the quarter flips. It's a great trick. And so I was like, well, yeah, it's such a good trick. But I was like watching Figure It Out, and I was like, my ankle is better than most of the stuff on this show. And I was like, Mom, I'm not crazy, right? My mom was like, no, you're not crazy, honey. Of course your ankle's better. Of course it is. And I said,
Carmen's mom when he wants to go out for football. Like, hey, you can do this, buddy. This is for you. It's not. It's really not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I said, okay, get at the camcorder. And we made a video and we sent it in. And yeah, I was in probably 6th grade or 7th grade or something. And then we waited months, nothing. Because it's not like you could just email a Vimeo link or something. It was snail mail, waiting for months. Who knows if it even got there? Who knows?
Everyone would send their wrestling tapes in back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm going, okay, I kind of given up on it. I was like, well, just one of those things, whatever. And then one afternoon, we got a phone call to the house going yeah, we'd like to invite Sam to be on this season of Figure It Out. And I was like, oh, this is great. And so yeah, and their deal was that they're like, we'll fly you to and from Orlando. we'll put you up for one night at Universal Studios to shoot the show and then go home. But if you want, we'll give you a discount at the hotel and we'll give you park admission. So if you want to stay for a few days after. So it's like, yeah, we made a Universal
legit vacation out of it.
100%.
And you got a booking out of it too.
And a booking. And yeah, and like, yeah, day one, like we went to the airport, they had the Sam Roberts sign, they brought us to the hotel, they kind of gave us the rundown tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. We woke up in the morning, got in the van, like they
with
shoot
with the other contestants and like their dogs and cats and that.
Yeah. It was like a clown car. Yeah. Yeah. And they like, they had to, I mean, it was like, everybody's making that dollar. I was wearing my Chuck Taylors and I had to take them off and put on Skechers because Skechers is the sponsor of the show.
It is the S.
Right,
Skechers
right,
is the
yes.
S. Yeah.
And so, and so I kind of waited. They shoot like 4 or 5 episodes in a day.
Okay.
So I waited until it was my turn, shot the episode. Big champion. They didn't guess my talent because it's so good.
And what was
and then they saw it. I blew everyone's minds. But then, like, the most Hollywood thing ever was the minute. Like, you have all day. Everyone's like, nice. You meet everybody. It's all great. The minute the show is taped, they like just rush you down a hallway into a van right back. Right. All right. You're done. It's almost like
Lori Beth Denberg couldn't have been bothered.
No.
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 Do you remember your panelists?
Yeah, it was Lori Beth. It was Danny Tamborelli.
Yeah. It
was Michelle Trachtenberg from Harriet the Spy.
Yep.
And it was the dude who hosted that game show, Nick Arcade.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep. I can't think of the name now.
But you know who I'm talking about.
100%.
Where you would go into the video game and yeah.
Which
so
I talked to Landon about now, and he's like, oh. And then I showed him it the other day, and he was like, this was ahead of it. I said, this was so ahead of its time. You have no idea how ahead of its time. And he goes, this looks bad. Watching it back now, it looks terrible. But also in 1991, it was so ahead of its time.
Like, we're around the same age. You and I are sitting there watching the TV going like,
yeah,
how did they do this? They're literally in the game.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Man, when I found that out, it was the most random thing ever that I would ever find out about. Like, especially, like, again, you're my age. Mm-hmm. I remember going to Nickelodeon Studios, which I have to, again, when Landon and I go down every May for our Disney, our Orlando trip, I have to say, no, that Blue Man Group was where Nick Studios was, and it was the coolest thing ever. They were I remember they were filming Legends of the Hidden Temple and Clarissa when I went.
Wow. And is the building like still the same shape? Because it had a very distinct shape.
Yeah, but it's all just like a Blue Man Group signage. It's just big and blue, and that's where they do their live show there now.
That's a bummer.
So,
because that was iconic. And it went in phases. Like, of course, it was like the biggest deal ever when it finally aired, and everybody knew in school and stuff. But then I got to college, and years went by, whatever. And then I got
what
to
year?
college.
What year would that have been? 92, 93?
Did the show shot? No, it was later than that. It was probably like 95, probably 95, 96-ish.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And so, but when I got to college, and everybody goes to their dorm and they sign up for their cable packages and they get their cable box and everything. The Nickelodeon Games and Sports Network had just started.
Yep.
And so, like, all of us, 18, 19-year-olds that were nostalgic for like 5 years before, we're all watching the game show reruns. And then, it started real slowly trickling in. I'd be like in the quad or whatever. And somebody would go, hey.
Yeah, did it hit you that, oh no, they're going to see me? Or was it like, you didn't even think about it really?
I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it at all. Like, I didn't think. And then slowly it started questions, just like how you started this conversation. Like, hey, man, I got to talk to you about something. I was just watching.
I could crush a can on my head with my foot. I did that at college parties and made a lot of money. Every empty beer, and I was underage college partying, and I would go to these parties and just crush cans on my foot for $1 a can. That was my trick.
That could have made it. That could have made it onto the show.
100%. And I would have met Danny Tamborelli.
Yeah.
The other Pete did nothing. The other Pete did nothing with the channel.
No, he never. No, because Danny Tamborelli went on and like did all that, and he
everything.
Yeah. No, and other Pete, like he did a couple of little like acting things. He had a run on one of those like commercials for insurance or something where he was like this
Not
punk
the,
rock
not the
kid.
Danny Tamborelli run though. That's for
But
sure.
he did not have no. Danny Tamborelli, like for a generation, like that's the dude.
Exactly. Him and Lori Beth Denberg were like our Selena Gomez, essentially.
That's right.
Like,
That's right. They were the original Disney
100%.
Channel kids. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you go from that, and the career future of ankle quarter flipping might not be what some may think. So how did it go
That's right.
from that? How did it go from that to radio? And that and
well,
radio.
This is true too. So I guess my dad became like a show business dad, and he was like, he'd take the train to the city every morning, and he's going through his newspaper on the train, and he's looking through the ads, and it says the David Letterman show is looking for stupid human tricks, and my dad's like, my dad's like, we got to do this, and like he never had an athlete. I wasn't an athlete. He never had that like coach dad thing, and I was like, what? Like this was a one-off. He's like, no. We got to get on Letterman.
We're gonna take it around the circuit.
I was like, all right. And he was like, okay.
And
so we went into the city for an audition or like just to, whatever. And it was like up above the Ed Sullivan Theater in like this loft, like all dusty and danky and dank and everything. And like, it was just these like dudes that were up there, these grown ass men and me and my dad. And they were like, well, can we see it? And I was like, this is like a Netflix doc or something. This is weird. And so I go, yeah. And I started doing the quarter trick, and they're like, whoa, because it really had some oomph to it. Like it was a strong, like the quarters would go flying. And like they were like, that was crazy. Do it again. Okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. And then one of them was like eating like a sandwich out of like a deli container. And he opened up his deli container, and he was like, can you land it in this deli container? And like they just had me keep doing it to see if I could land it in a deli container, because they wanted to be able to pitch to Dave like it's not just a kid flipping quarters. Like you have to, and they were like, you have to be able to like land it into something, whether it's like, and I think one idea that was floated
with quarter with your ankle isn't enough.
No, it wasn't. They were like, one bit idea was like, maybe it could be, because it's the 90s, don't forget.
Yeah.
So like one idea was like, maybe you could land it in between like a well-endowed woman's breasts. I was like, okay. Like I was like, all right. And so for like 2 months, I want to say, I go home and my dad would get out a bowl, like after he'd get home from work,
Sam,
and he'd have me practice flipping the quarter, trying to land it in the bowl. And like it never worked out, and I never got on Letterman, but like my ankle also never recovered.
What?
Well, it got sore. Like I can still like, I have the mobility, but I never got the strength back. Like it got so worn out from all the practicing that I never got the strength back. So like, not only did I not get on Letterman, but like it was not nearly as impressive anymore. Like we blew it. It's like, it's like when a quarterback throws that one pass and you go,
Roger Clemens. You're essentially the Roger Clemens of quarter flipping.
Yes.
With your ankle.
And you're like, when it's over. And you're like, oh, he lost the match.
Leave the memories alone.
Right.
You flipping it into different various Tupperwares.
That's right. And then at that very last shot, it just lands next to the bowl, not in it. And you're like, oh.
Dad picks up that quarter and just...
No. Yeah, just disappointed.
Back in the piggy bank. Okay. So
radio was a lot of the next step. So yeah, no, I studied film in college, but also like I've just always been interested in I guess media and storytelling, and professional wrestling is obviously a huge part in all that, because I've been I was obsessed with pro wrestling when I was on Figured Out. I was obsessed with pro wrestling when I was in a Letterman's weird, loft. Throughout every piece of this, I was also obsessed with pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So,
was that the end goal?
Well, not necessarily, because I wasn't I wasn't an athlete. You know what I mean?
No,
It
but
was
like,
like,
to be involved in professional wrestling, was that the end goal?
well, it was more like, because it was hard to envision how that would come about, right?
How you would turn something into being involved in professional wrestling?
Right. Like, I had no idea how you become like a wrestling commentator or how, like,
Interviewer or
like,
something. Yeah.
exactly. So, I'm like, okay, well, I also love radio, and talk radio was big at the time. So when I was in college, I started doing just a ton of college radio, and just like, just whatever shifts I could get, doing it like multiple times a week, just like became pretty obsessed with it. And, slowly but surely started to like, okay, it became a big part of what I did in Syracuse. I started applying for internships while I was up there, and got an internship with Opie and Anthony between my junior and senior year. And
that was in the city always, or no?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. When I was there, yeah.
Yeah.
It was after, like, they were in Boston before that, but I was way after that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so that's kind of how things got started from that perspective. It was like, college radio turned into an internship, turned into working for free, turned into, low level employment, turned into slightly higher level employment, and so on and so forth.
I mean, there was, but like slightly higher employment is kind of an understatement. You went to literally, you were, yeah. It got way bigger on that, part of that show and all of that. And then hosting with Jim Norton, it was like, that was when we first met, right? When I did my book stuff? Or did we meet before that? It was either that or the Major lot, the you and Major.
I'm sure we met while you like on throughout WWE. Like, I'm sure there's pictures of me and you at a meet and greet or at a press event or something.
If there
like
is,
that. But in terms of actually,
we need to find them.
I'm sure I'll just go through my phone.
Yes,
like, I'm positive.
Yeah. That'll make me very, very happy.
Okay, I'll find it and try to send it to you.
But I remember doing the book promotion when my book came out with you and Jim, and like, pumped for it, because I was like, man, I get to do something in the city with these guys in the show, and I know this show and all that. And then what I thought was going to be awesome book promotion, just talking about my story and my life and my career in WWE and now post WWE, because I was released at the time, turned into a long talk about Jim and I's shitting of our own pants.
That sounds right. Like,
and
I didn't know where you were going.
It was it was pretty instant because I mentioned or he mentioned it, or I, about IBS, and then the other one went, "Oh yeah, I have it too," and like we went back and forth about how many times a year and how we tally it and how I still tally it to this day. And like, I remember walking out of the interview going, I know there's some usable things for book promotion in that, and like media for the book, but that was all pants shit talk.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, like, and I'm sitting there.
You literally were going, you had to look on your face like, how did we get here? And knowing Jim was like, this is usual. Like, this isn't uncommon, essentially.
No, and I was happy about it, I'm sure, because it's like, it's always like, okay, how am I going to bring my wrestling stuff into like this other world stuff? So the minute somebody comes in and is talking about like shitting their pants, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, this is easy.
Was he ever a wrestling guy like you, or never to, obviously, probably to that level, but
Jim,
never at all?
No, not at all. No.
Hated
he claimed, you know what he did? He told, he does a UFC podcast.
Yeah.
And they had Grayson Waller on to talk about something. And just mid-podcast, part of the interview, he goes, hey, do you know Sam Roberts? And Waller was like, oh, yeah. He works with us. Like, I remember he used to have hair, blah, blah, blah. And then Jim's like, oh, yeah. I got him into wrestling. And Grayson's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, I got him into it. And he's like, oh, that's great. He's great to. And he never was like, I'm just kidding. It was just like, he just told me like 2 days later on the air on our show, who's that Australian wrestler?
Oh,
I was like, it's great. You talking about Grayson Waller? He goes, yeah. I had him on the show. He's like, oh, how was he? And Jim was like, oh, he was great. Yeah. No, I told him how I got you into wrestling and everything. I was like, you what?
He like it wasn't like a haha, yeah, I did this. He was like, no, I got you into it.
I did.
And like in his mind, again, telling you he still got you into wrestling.
100%. And then so now, like, anytime I post, if you go through, like, especially in that time period, the comments on Instagram, like, I'd post like, new wrestling podcast is up and throw a clip up, and there's always someone in the comments going like, man, it's so cool that Jim got you into this stuff.
Especially because, like you said, he had like no cares in the world. Would he scoff at it, or just was like, that's not my thing?
No, it's just not his thing. Like, he has a great deal of respect for it, and he actually loves having wrestlers on the show because wrestlers can talk. Like, you tell stories. You're used to having a live microphone.
Yeah.
You're used to being able to go with the flow and improvise, and just no matter what position you're in, turn it into something entertaining. And he kind of picks up on that immediately. So he likes it and wrestlers and respects the business and everything. It's just not his thing.
Isn't that funny that still, like, to this day, media outlets especially that don't, the local news and local radio and that kind of thing, and if they don't know wrestling, let's say, and obviously you do, and you've been a lifelong fan, and Jim gets it, but like media doesn't understand, like, wrestlers are used to doing interviews and used to doing media and aren't just the big dumb jocks like some probably think they are going into the interview. Like, it's very easy to interview a pro wrestler compared to, like, someone else in either the entertainment or the sports world.
Yeah. I mean, I watch these, like, regular, for like, interviewers that, like, are still kind of in that kayfabe world, and like wrestlers looking at the interviewers like almost like, what are you doing? Like, what are you?
It's 2024. Like, exactly. Yeah,
we all know, but like, and so like the interviewers that like they think that they have figured out what's really going on, but fans and the wrestlers themselves think that it's all real. So I'm going to talk down to you now, and you're like, what are you doing?
20 years ago, that might have been the thing to do, or might have been how to handle an interview.
Not even 20
probably still wasn't. But let's like at least treat these people like let's call a spade here.
Yeah. I mean,
so how does it become the transition from that into really focusing on your love of wrestling and focusing on that stuff? Was it having more wrestlers on the show over time? You started the podcast. What was it like? What was the moment where you're like, I'm gonna jump into another venture that's wrestling content?
Well, definitely having more wrestlers on the show, and my wrestling fandom became a thing on the show. Like, Opie and Anthony got such a kick out of me being this like weirdo wrestling fan that like when they did the angle where Vince's limo blew up, they would have me come on because they'd go like, oh, they're doing this like ridiculous bit on the show where Vince's limo blew up, and I go, guys, if we could be a little bit respectful, the chairman was blown up last night. They're like, what? I go, yeah, no. If you want to pull up the video, the chairman's limo, and they still don't know who did it.
The limo just sold for $85,000.
I just saw that,
and I think that's very low.
I do too. I feel like
I think it's very low.
Like if I don't know if I could come up with $85,000 on my own, but with a couple of people, I feel like we could pull it.
I thought that same thing. I go, where the fuck would I put the thing?
Right.
Right. That's a piece of history. But where am I going to put it?
Big time. But so like, yeah. So I would do stuff like that. Like, be the guy.
You'd pull into the bit.
Fully. Like, if you're going to think it's stupid that I'm a wrestling fan, wait till you see how stupid it's going to be. Like, you have no idea.
And they enjoyed it. They didn't take it as you were mocking them. They enjoyed the bit.
Yes. Yeah. It's just being the foil and keeping this thing going. Yeah. Everybody. Yeah. Exactly. And then they started having like wrestlers in and writing embarrassing questions that I would have to ask. Like, so like MVP during his first, but I mean, luckily, again, wrestlers are so aware of when a bit is happening.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that they go like, oh, I see what's going on. But like MVP came in during his first run. Like he's like
Power
United
Ranger
States
run?
champion, fairly new.
The
And
Power Ranger gear.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I had pushed to get MVP in because I don't think they probably even knew who MVP was at that point. But I was like, no, he's awesome. Like you gotta have him in. Blah, blah. And so then, like as he was in studio, they just gave me a piece of paper, and I was like, "What's this?" And they were like,
You
"Hey,
were never smartened up for any of them? Or?
no." They were like, "Hey, MVP, Sam has some questions for you," and I was like, "Oh." And I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh no!" And they're like, "Sam, go ahead." And I was like, "MVP, what do you enjoy more, being a wrestler or being in jail?" and
Oh no!
And luckily, like he was aware that I was being put through a humiliation ritual, and was, I mean, cool with it to the point that we're friends to this day. I think because that's how we first met, you know. But so that was a part of the thing, and then you knew Joe Villa, right?
Yeah.
Who worked in PR.
Yep.
He came in one day and he was like, we had somebody in and it was WrestleMania time and they were doing a press conference at the Hard Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, are you going to the press conference later? And I was like, oh, I would love to. It's not open to the public. And he goes, right. Yeah. It's just for the press. I go, yeah. And he goes, just for the media. And I go, yeah, not open to the public. And he goes, Sam, you're the media. I was like, I was like, really? He was like, yeah, of course. Of course. You would just ask to go and you could go. Like, that's who it's for. I was like, this never occurred to me at all. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I would love to go. Yeah, I would love to go. And so that's how I found out I go to press conferences. And so, started doing interviews there. And again, at first it was like going to do interviews that I was just collecting for the radio show, but I don't even remember which one it was, but at one of them, I was like, well, they might play this audio, they might not. But what if while I was doing this, I also just like asked questions that I actually wanted to know, like asked wrestling questions and just put it up on my YouTube channel,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
And that was the beginning of everything picking up steam, and it led to a podcast, led to everything. Yeah.
So when at that point did you feel comfortable? More, I mean, none of us feel comfortable. The minute we feel comfortable, we're too comfortable in wrestling, in any bit of wrestling, I feel. But when was it like, hey, I am kind of part of this world?
Well, I'm still to this day very
I know. But
you know what I mean?
I can say it. I can say it. You're part of this world.
I appreciate that. But like, yeah, I mean, to the point where like, yeah. So like where I felt comfortable actually like that, like, oh, for instance, I can talk to you.
Yeah.
About wrestling, about whatever, and we can just hang with
like
people who know each other.
No, exactly. Like that's. Was there a thing where it's like, okay, these people don't view me as just the local radio guy that they have to go to promote a Garden event or to promote, a Brooklyn event. Does that make sense? Kind of. Yeah,
totally. I think it was when I found out that people had. It was years and years and years in, but it was when I found out that like there had been people in the business that had listened to my stuff and enjoyed it. Like actually, like, oh, this
podcast
is just
more so, or radio, or a little both.
Podcast. Like when it was like, it was one thing if you heard the radio show and like that, I'm like, that's great, I love that. Yep. But like in terms of feeling like, oh, that's like business acceptance. It was more like when wrestlers had heard some kind of wrestling content I did, be it whatever, the podcast, an interview, something like that. Okay. And we're like, oh, I really enjoyed that. That's when I was like, oh, that's unexpected. And that's really cool. And yeah.
I think we all kind of feel that way, even in wrestling, of like when someone from outside the world, or that we look up to, or that we whatever kind of view on a different platform, knows of us. It's always like, holy shit, I'm doing something right. Like I'm doing something pretty cool. Yeah.
Right. Or like when you introduce yourself to somebody, they're like, yeah, I know you are. I'm like, oh.
It's the best feeling ever, man. It is the best feeling. Like it's the coolest thing. You and I have very similar mindsets of, I still to this day don't believe I'm anything. And literally, it's when someone goes, so yeah, I know. It's like, oh, okay.
Right.
Well, there's
Yeah, I
one
mean,
that does. There's one that does, but like
I feel like I try like the perspective that I maintain. I mean, fairly naturally. It's not like I have to work at
Yes.
maintaining the perspective, but it's like number one, I'm only here because I'm a fan and I'm still just a fan.
Correct.
Like I'm watching as a fan. But number two, ultimately, I'm talking about things other people are doing. Without them doing it,
Yeah.
I can't talk about it.
yeah,
right?
okay. I never thought about that perspective of it. Yeah, that's great.
So this idea that I'm indebted to what you guys do because you create this thing, like your wrestling is the nucleus.
but let's flip it around. If no one's talking about it, or if no one cares to talk about it and focus on it, how do we promote ourselves if no one's going to promote ourselves for us? You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of like-
suppose, and I think too that that's part of it. That like especially now when I do the wrestling podcast, like it's I try to make sure that I talk about wrestling in a way that I would like to hear wrestling spoken about, and in a way that I feel like everything pushes the business forward, even if it's by the smallest, tiniest millimeter. Like just something, like nothing here is counteractive to the business, because there are a lot of people who create wrestling content that is destructive, because destructive content is
exactly.
clickable content.
People
And that's
wanna
like,
click. Yep.
yeah. And I can't like that. It's one of my greatest pet peeves in the world is people who find a niche like this and like decide to go the destructive route. I'm like, why? Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. There's no good to it besides profiting for themselves. Like it's
Short term
literally-
and short term.
Correct. Yeah, because on the next day there's
Right.
gonna be another one clickable. Like and like it's just being.
And if
bad
you're
person.
successful and you destroy, what are you going to have to talk about later?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and you're not gonna be the one blamed for that. Like you're not gonna be the one putting on a pillar. Like, hey, you did this. Congrats. It's like it's forgotten who did it, but
Exactly.
what the negative was.
Mm-hmm.
So the podcast turns into live shows at Caroline's, and they've become, I'll say this, they've become like the happening thing when they go on. Like I always look at him like, oh, that's really fun. Like because I think fans go, who's gonna show up? Like it's kind of a fun thing. The first one you did, you had Brock and Heyman there.
Well, that wasn't my
Like-
live show. That was
I
I
thought
did
it
a
was
live show
yours.
that weekend. I did a live show that
Oh, I thought it was
weekend.
at yours.
Heyman did the live show,
Okay, that's yes. Heyman did it. Yes.
which was nuts.
How does it come across? How does it? Yeah. How
Did I have Heyman on, or did I talk to Brock and Heyman?
that you had Heyman on your live show during one of the busiest weekends ever?
Well, so like we were kind of trying to put it together, and nobody was doing live wrestling podcasts yet, right? So it was kind of like, wait, what is this? And I'm trying to like convince people, no, this is that, this is what it is. And
You reaching out to talent.
reaching out to WWE through the PR, the people that
Okay,
were
yeah,
in
okay.
PR
Yeah,
at the time, and trying to, and like, you know, a couple of people got it, and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. And a lot of people were like, I don't understand, we haven't done this before. So like, yeah, getting Heyman on. I mean, I've been like very lucky that Paul Heyman is somebody that has been aware of what I've been doing since the very beginning. Like he was the first person that I remember. And this was in his hiatus from WWE. So he wasn't in WWE at the time, but still, like I've been a worshiper of Paul Heyman since I was a kid. Like I was addicted to ECW. Like, you know, so he tweeted out one of the very first kind of, hey, I'm here with so-and-so, what's the haps montages that I did. And that was one of the first, like, oh my God, like somebody noticed this. This is insane. And so from that point on, I think he just got a kick out of what I was doing and was aware. And then we were able to just, the one guy in WWE PR, Joe Villa, was able to say, hey, Paul, and we just go to him face to face. You know Sam Roberts, right? Oh, yeah, I know Sam Roberts. He's doing this live show in New York. And Paul's like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And it's just one of those things that just worked out. And Joe's like, hey, I was able to get Paul Heyman. I'm like, what? Yes. Perfect.
And then it was like, again, we talk, I kind of talk about a lot of episodes. I talk about like pinch me moments. Was that another one that was like, Oh my God, Heyman's gonna do this live show?
Insane. And by the way, what's really amazing is that like that first live show at Caroline's that Heyman did it, like the most massive pinch me moment ever. Over the summer, like a month and a half ago, in August, Fanatics Fest, I did Not Sam Wrestling live at Fanatics Fest, and they were like, "Here is the talent available," and I was like, "Paul Heyman," not thinking, right? And they were like, "Okay, can you do Saturday at whatever time with Paul Heyman?" I was like, "Yes." And again, like all these years later, sitting on stage at the Javits Center, just like talking to Paul Heyman about this Bloodline story in a real way was like, it was the exact same level, if not higher level of like,
I think it's even higher. I think it's almost even higher because now, again, you view yourself as a fan talking about something you love.
Yeah.
You should be viewed in a much different way, I feel, as your friend, but not even just as your friend, but as a person. You're at that level now where they'll not even question you interviewing Paul Heyman,
which is crazy, right? Which is like,
insane.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's actually a great point. That's the thing that makes it so much more insane now, that it's easier now. You know what I mean? That you don't feel like you have to go through hoops, that it is one of those like, hey,
you yourself don't have to.
Right. That it's one of those like, hey, I'd like to do this. And there are people now that go like, oh yeah, we can make that happen. Oh yeah. And then it actually happens. Like that's nuts to me, because I'm not removed at all from,
exactly.
The kid who was like, what do you mean I can't go to the press conference? It's closed to the public.
Yeah. You just said how you're doing, you did Fanatics Fest, and how you're almost like, I feel, you're accepted, and you are, as crazy as it is, you're part of WWE, and you're there. How did it go from doing a podcast and getting a guest here and there to literally getting the call for the kickoff show and to be part of kickoff shows and post shows?
Well, I had been trying to do stuff with WWE forever. Like, I think, making as many people aware of the fact that this was something that I wanted to do for a long time. Josh Matthews was able to get me an audition over there, but obviously Josh Matthews had enough pull to get somebody an audition, but not somebody hired.
What year would that have been?
Huh?
What year would that have been?
Let's see. Probably maybe the early 2010s ish.
I was gonna say 2011, 2012, but I couldn't think.
Probably probably around then.
Okay.
But so I've been, and I made a lot of friends over there and everything, and it was, it was just kind of like, everybody knew who Sam was, but it was, Sam. It's always been like kind of Sam just does what Sam does, so it's like if we need Sam to do what Sam does, we'll figure it out. But that's like you can't put me in a suit and I'm Sean Mooney. You know what I mean? I don't have that quality. I'm not that polished guy.
Yep.
But then one day, like 8 years ago, more or less, I got a phone call from Michael Cole, and he was like, "Hey, man, we're looking into putting some outside point of views on the kickoff show. Would you want to come in and do a kickoff show?" And this is like how Michael Cole does business. Like he's like, "Okay, here's what it is. Do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like
exactly.
Yeah. And so like that's what it was. It was like, we'll bring you to Stanford so you can kind of get a feel for what it might feel like and do like a mock thing. And then we're going to bring you in. You can sit on one panel. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if we like it. We'll see if you like it. And then we'll go from there. And so I did one. And then they were like, okay, we'll bring you back for another one. I was like, awesome. And then they're like, okay, we'll bring you back for WrestleMania. And then it was just like, yeah, we're bringing you back. And they just kind of kept doing that for a while until they gave me a full-time deal earlier this year.
Hell yeah. That's again, for it to be almost like nonchalant, but like, hey, do you want to do this?
Right.
Do you?
But that's the way it's always been. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way it's always just like, just keep putting the work in, just tirelessly. And eventually one day this person says this, that person says that. You want to try this? You want to try that? It's like, yeah. And also, like, for me, I feel very strongly that it's like, just let me get my foot in the door. Once my foot's in the door, it's going to be real hard to get me out. Like, I'm
exactly.
I'm there. I'm in
exactly.
there now.
We talked about it earlier. Every kind of episode of these, I like to talk about pinch me moments, and it's just like fun things like that, because things I do, I think about. I am 38 now, and I can truly go back and go, I didn't realize what the moment was at that time, and now I look back, or Landon tells me, or someone brings it up because I don't remember things I do. And so he goes, hey, what about this? And I go, oh man, that was pretty awesome. Like, thinking back on it. Was there a pinch me moment, both on and off air, that really like stood out? Whether it be podcast thing, or something off air, like the call from Michael Cole, or like, what are a couple moments that you can think of like that, where it's like, man, I can't believe that my love of wrestling as a kid like grew, and it's now this. What would that guy, that kid that loved wrestling his whole childhood and still to this day, man, what would he like think? Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, they happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like, still now, like, all the time they happen. And I try to, like,
it's because you're a good human and you actually care, and you actually like still let yourself love this. That's
and
why.
I try to take inventory of it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I try to like go like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is nuts what's happening right now. So like, and it's a big thing for me that no matter what happens in the future, this thing can't be changed. Like, once this thing has happened, it's done. Like, if you never hear from me again, I did that. It happened.
Guys,
you know what I mean?
Vince was my illegitimate father. We probably can't talk about it, but he was at one point.
It happened.
And that always happened. I got that.
Yeah. I think a couple moments, like WrestleMania 35, they had a rotating cast on the kickoff show, and I want to say it was like 2 hours long. And the only two people that they kept on for the entire show was Jonathan Coachman, who was the anchor, and me. They kept me on the entire time. That was like,
you didn't know going into it?
No, I knew going into it, but you know how it is.
Yeah.
You know, they tell you this is what we're gonna do, and you're still waiting at every single break for them to pull you off and throw somebody else in, and it's fine, by the way, if they do it. It's like, I would put this person on too. But yeah, at the end of that show, that was one of those like, oh my god, like, I can't believe that just happened. I did commentary for a bunch of episodes of Main Event in like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That was like every single one, like sitting at the table, putting the headset on in an arena is like, what the hell? Like, what the hell is going on right now? That was another one. But, they have like, literally, I'll say going to Fanatics Fest in August and sitting in a back room with Paul Heyman for an hour, just kind of chopping it up before we went on stage. That's like, I'm sitting there actively going like, this is really happening. Like, you think, it's a simulation. You know what I mean? Life is a simulation. It doesn't make any sense.
No. And that's the thing where it's like, yeah, exactly what you said. You are sitting in a green room, or in a not, you're not there interviewing him for work, and he's not there part of a job to be sitting with you. You know what I mean? It's now two guys just catching up, essentially, before you go to work. Like, it's insane. That's insane. And that fact that you can still see it as that says a lot about you too. You know what I mean? That this is still a day-to-day one of those, maybe this shouldn't be happening, but yeah, this is pretty cool that it is.
Yeah, let's not disrupt it. You know what I mean? Like, it's working. So just keep doing this.
I think one of the main things that brought you and I together even more was our work together with the Major Wrestling Figure podcast. We love Brian. Mark is great. Knick is awesome. that encapsulates our love for the major wrestling figure.
He's gonna be so mad, especially after you blocked him. He's gonna be so mad.
Still, yeah, no, he won't ever see this because he's blocked. Was there always a love for wrestling figures? Was that a
Yeah.
Also, I have to ask you, because your love of wrestling figures, my other show, State of Affairs, with Captain Joe Shoes, we debated LJN versus Hasbro. What team are you on?
For me, it's Hasbro, but I mean that's
Thank you.
also that's when I fell in love. That was my Fig Fed. That was everything. Like that's when like Hasbro's were the ones that like you associate wrestling figure collecting with the love of pro wrestling, and like they become intertwined.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that to me, like the Hasbro's like went through so many generations, like coming out of that late 80s era all the way through to the new generation. You know, I mean, just I going to the store because it was pre-internet and like finding new guys.
Not knowing they were coming out at all? Yeah.
There's a Sid Justice. There's a Sid Justice figure. And you start going through trying to figure out what other new guys there are. Like, you know, and then like, you know, you go home and you go, oh, Ludwig Borga has the Sid Justice body. And you're like comparing them. Like, yeah.
So it was always a love for wrestling figures. That was like growing up.
mean,
Was that your thing? Was your that and GI Joes, that and Turtles, or was it almost just wrestling figures?
When I was young, I had a pretty decent He-Man collection, pretty decent Thundercats collection. Big time turtle guy. Turtles were huge. Had the sewer, had the turtles, had the van, had, you know what I mean? Yeah, turtles were big time. But like the wrestling figure collection was number one. The stuff that literally every day I was having, you know, I was doing my cards and like, you know, booking my shows and acting out this federation. But also, and I think that hopefully you'll agree with me, but I think you find more and more people like this. Wrestling figures are the ones that people who are obsessed with it play with for way longer than they should. Like you've outgrown toys.
I still put together Fig Fed. Like Landon will be doing his Fig Feds at 14 years old, and he'll be doing his Fig Fed or his like matches and his cards, and I'll go, I don't know if that makes sense, buddy. I don't know if that would ever look like And then I'm realizing and he looks at me like, Cat, this is mine, you know, this is my federation. And I go, that doesn't make any sense booking wise. Darby Allin wouldn't beat everyone on the card, buddy. Like
where are you gonna go after that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He can't help all 8 of your titles. Oh, you want more titles? Shocking. But yeah, you never grow out of it. Like, and you're always like, whenever you see him, it's always a fun thing because even at the store now, it's like you go through the toy aisle, whether it's for your children or just because you go through Target and you have to check out the figure aisle, no matter what.
Every time, and it's like, and the kids are getting annoyed because it's like. My son wants to look at his stuff. My daughter wants to look at her stuff. And they both know we also have to stop in the wrestling section to look at dad's stuff.
When it's the same shit. There's going to be a Trish. There's going to be 2 Cenas that are basic. But it's going to be the same stuff. But we have to look. And we probably won't buy.
No.
We won't buy.
No, and you have to look behind the stuff, too, just to see if a good one was hidden somewhere. Yeah.
What I love about our friendship and what it's grown into is not only the random texts or messages, but like the random runnings-ins that we have, and it's always an ear-to-ear grin, including Wale Mania, where I think both of us were very. I mean, I knew you went to them, and I was like, okay, but then seeing you, I think both of us were almost like, what the hell are we doing here? Like,
yeah, I started going. I think really like 2 years ago, right? The Wale Mania in Los Angeles. I actually went and like committed to going and actually had a good time. And part of it was just the spectacle of like being an complete outsider.
Yeah.
But then this year in Philly, like seeing you on stage and then going like, okay, this is getting too weird. I got to go backstage. And then it got even weirder because I spent the rest of the time, like I ran into Gerald Briscoe and I was like, Mr. Briscoe. And he was just like, you talk about somebody who should not have been there. Gerald Briscoe is there. And I just start introducing because all these like rappers, hip hop guys, whoever that are there are such big wrestling fans that they all love Gerald Briscoe. So I'm like, Wale, like Gerald Briscoe's here, and he's like, oh my god, like, and Gerald Briscoe is just sitting there like the man.
I knew it was so much fun. It was so much fun. I'm going to go every year if they'll have me. I literally knew at one point, I go, okay, it's a point in the night where it's time to go. It's time to go. I didn't see Wale yet. I didn't know if Wale was there yet. As I was leaving to go to my Uber, Wale is walking in. And I go, oh no, this is awkward now. He goes, are you just leaving? I said, Wale, thank you for that. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me rap country grammar on your stage. It's time to go. He goes, understandable. Get out of here while you can. And I'm like, I don't know quite what that means, but now I know that it is time for me to go. And it was. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. And you probably would have been trapped there for a lot longer.
I would have been there way later than I thought. Yeah. But it was, man, I just couldn't. Like, it was one of those things where seeing you, I was like, it was one of those, we locked eyes and it was like, what the hell are we both doing here? Like, it's just crazy. It's
yeah. How do we get
wrestling?
Here?
Pro wrestling. That's what I love is it brings randomness and like brings people so far out of their possible comfort zones at times and puts them into positions that are out of their comfort zones that it's always like, okay, but this is great. It's wrestling that brings everything together. And that's the crazy part. I feel like you hit on that a lot on your shows and all of that. It's like wrestling brings so many things in culture and in people and in just friends together that they don't even realize.
Yeah. I mean, people like from outside of wrestling, when they see me and like Smoke Dizza hug each other like we're brothers who haven't seen each other in years, they're like, how are you this close with Smoke Dizza? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, it's wrestling, dude.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we can catch you literally everywhere. You search wrestling media and it's you. It is your face on all of it. Whether it's WWE, podcasting, anything. But tell them where you would like to be caught.
Well, Not Sam Wrestling is the best direct source to me. If you search it, you could search it here on YouTube. You could search the podcast every week. Every Monday, we put up a new Not Sam Wrestling video and audio. And then throughout the week, there's always emergency podcasts that absolutely
have it on my list. Where did that come from?
The emergency podcast?
Why was it like I need to do this right now? What was the one thing that was like?
It was definitely like last year was when it took off, right? Because like when the Rock started doing stuff and it was like the whole build to WrestleMania was like, okay, like I got to start doing, and then they started, I got a real good response on them. Like people really, they liked them. They liked the immediacy of it. They liked that it was just feelings. It wasn't like, here's everything that went down. Here's my full thought out analysis. It was just like, here's how I'm feeling right now that this just happened. And then, Peter Rosenberg did a podcast and he texted me. He was like, you should listen to what I said about emergency podcasts. And I go, okay. And so I went over to his thing and it was like, he did this whole thing. You know, I think we're overusing this emergency podcast thing. I think, you know, it's not always an emergency, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, okay. All right. You want to mess around? So not only did I fully commit, but I instantly, upon hearing that, went out and bought a siren so I could go, no, it's actually even a bigger emergency than you think it is. Drew McIntyre just broke the bracelet. This, if anything is an emergency, it's that. We need to get our feelings out right now. And that's what it is. The emergency podcast is because we have feelings and we can't bottle those up. It's toxic.
We can't wait till the next episode. It has to be let out now.
100%. And I'm sure there will be multiple emergencies this week.
Man, thank you. This is I do this these interviews and these small talks of sorts with people that I look up to, which because of my stature is just about everyone besides my son when he was 3, but also buddies. Like, and to have you on and just, I knew texting, I was like, hey, this could be a really, really fun one because it's just, again, it's 2 people that love wrestling and that just love what we do and can't believe we get to do it as a profession.
Well, also like getting back to like the pinch me moments that aren't lost on me. It's like, of course, like, you know, we're going to do this because we're buds, because we've known each other for a while, because, you know, we'll do each other's shows, whatever. But then there's also this other thing that is reminding me, hey, dude, Hornswoggle wants to talk to you on his podcast. That's super lit. Like, that's nuts.
That means a lot to me. Like,
You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
cool. I'm glad you, again, one of the biggest, I say it all the time, I'm a therapist's cash cow and worst nightmare because I don't see myself ever that way. So hearing it is always like, ugh, this weird thing because I don't view, but I appreciate that. I appreciate
And here's the
whenever.
thing. Here's the thing. In an era when there's a lot of wrestlers' names that I could mention that most normies wouldn't know who I was talking about, right? It would mean nothing.
I love that word. That's how we describe your people, as normies. Like,
Normies. Yeah, normies. Yeah.
There's my
Busting,
people,
disgusting.
there's my people, and then there's, normies.
Normies. Disgusting normies. I want
People
nothing
that
to do
can
with
reach
them.
a top shelf,
That's right. That's right. But, I mean, most people that I know, if I was like, yeah, I was busy doing Hornswoggle's podcast, they'd be like, Hornswoggle's podcast? They'd be super excited by it. And that speaks to the body of work that you've created.
Thanks, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate that. Guys, let's talk about Mad Cat Beard Care. They make my beard feel soft, silky smooth, and they can do the same for yours. A one-man show since 2019, Mad Cat uses a portion of their sales to care for local stray cats. That money covers their medical bills and finds them safe spaces and forever homes. Their products are made to order with vitamins and all-natural oils that promote strong, healthy hair and moisturize your skin as well. They've got exclusive scents for myself, as well as other wrestlers like my good pal Brian Myers, Mr. Kennedy, and Ring of Honor legend Delirious. Make sure to check out all of their scents, along with my Swoggled scent, which has notes of lavender and sage. I absolutely love this scent. And guys, we've got an exclusive offer for listeners of Going Postl. Use promo code SWOGGLED to save yourself 15% on your orders only at madcatbeardcare.com. That is Swoggled with a D on the end to save yourself 15% on your orders at madcatbeardcare.com. Guys, that's 15% with promo code SWOGGLed. And remember, the Mad Cat makes a happy beard. That was it. A nice chat with my buddy Sam. Let me tell you, I wasn't expecting the first time. It felt like 20 minutes, probably was just under, just to be Nickelodeon talk and our love for Nickelodeon. Like that shocked me in itself of how long we went about Nickelodeon. Sam, thank you. Thank you so much. We got into literally everything. I feel like we covered everything about him and about his life. And just like, man, we did a deep dive onto a lot of things, and it made me happy, man. And at the end, he says such nice things about me that I don't even accept or think. So that makes me feel good too.
It was a great interview. You could tell that you guys are having fun, and I honestly, there are a lot of people that I hope that you have back for round twos of small talks, just because I think that there's a lot left on the plate.
If we could do a me him CVV triple app, guys, thank you for checking it out. These small talks, they mean a lot to me because it's like, I never know how I say it every time. I never know how they're going to turn out going into them, but they're always so fun and so just like easygoing and just buddies talking. That's all I want them to be. I say that every time too. But for you to sit through them, and hopefully you guys get as much entertainment out of them as we do. Guys, if you do, we would love to have you head over to Apple Music or Apple Pod, Spotify, on YouTube here. Leave a comment. Write a review. Leave us a 5-star rating if you please. And you could win. We pick your review, and you could win a signed 8x10. Johnny Espinoza just got his signed 8x10. The next winner could be you.
you heard him in the beginning. We're going to do it once again to wrap up the episode. All the social plugs at Going Postal Pod, at Dylan Postal, youtube.com/Dylan Postal, swoggleauction.com. Tonight, big whatnot auction coming from Landon and Dylan. Get yourself that free $10 credit over at whatnot when you sign up at swoggleauction.com. DylanPostal.com for all things Swoggle, ProWrestlingTees.com/Swoggle for all of Swoggle's shirts. Patreon.com/PodXchange for exclusive content from this show, State of Affairs, and the Game Marks podcast. And
Speaking
PodXchange,
of the Game Marks podcast, George, if they don't know, what is the Game Marks podcast?
that's another podcast that I host. It is me and former Create a Pro champion Johnny Clash. But on this show, and honestly, it's starting to bleed over into the other show too, Dylan likes to call him what?
A cruise.
We break down a different video game each and every week. And you can check us out on all forms of social media at Game Marks Pod. And we are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're there. We're also on YouTube. So check us out. With that, man, another stellar interview that you did. There's only one thing left to do, and that is to leave them with that signature Dylan Postal sign off. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it? Guts.